Hello, Marco. I was looking over your post. Thanks for doing that. I haven't looked through your object map just yet, but first blush, it's looking great. You had a question though that I wanted to address. You asked here, is there something like a conditional attribute? The seasonal festival has some attributes which depend on type festival, Sabbath type, and full moon name. Indeed, there is a way that we can do this, and I can show you how I do this pretty explicitly when I'm doing object maps. So if I have a thing, I think you did this, which is great. So if I have this thing called a seasonal festival, and I do the first thing is object instancing. So I say the most formative piece of, the most formative attribute or piece of core content would be its name, such as embolic or Ostara. And I tend to do EG to say that these are examples. It's not a complete list. So for example, embolic or Ostara. And then you say there's a type, Sabbat or Esbit. And if I don't do EG, I am saying that these are the two and only two types that we have. So if that's incorrect, if instead that there's more types than this, you would say EG, Sabbat or Esbat. Or you could do the thing of like Sabbat, Esbat, etc. Just some way to kind of point to the fact that there are more things here, either that you suspect or that you know. And then you can do this kind of idea here. So if you have a Sabbat type, and it could either be a solar festival or a fire festival, and then I do this kind of notation to say if the type equals Sabbat. So essentially this says if the type is Sabbat, this Sabbat type will be necessary, required, and that it could be either of these two things. The other way you can do this is through what is called a Matryoshka diagram. Let's do that. This one doesn't show a lot of relationships, and that's okay. So the Matryoshka diagram is usually good for showing lots of very complex relationships. Let me show you a version of that I drew for work. So you can see in this Matryoshka diagram here, this is the milestone 1 version of the container object called a moment collection. And you can start seeing that it's got relationships, and then there are nested objects. This is also a nested object, it's just there's only one of them. This is by proxy anyways. And then this nested object would have these most important pieces of metadata, these attributes. And then there is a nested object in here, which it's honestly really only a place, it's a container object for this object plus, and this should be highlighted in pink, this piece of metadata, this attribute. But you can go even crazier with it with conditional logic here. So for my second milestone, you'll see here that this container object, which is called moment collection, has either one-to-many moment ranges, either or 1 to n moments. So it either has all of this or it has all of this. So you can go pretty nuts with this. You don't need to, your example doesn't require to go nuts, but like we can start with a Matryoshka diagram here. So the first thing that we do is we make this the object. So we say this is a seasonal festival. We're gonna put this on the top. We'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it a little bit nicer. Okay. And then we say, well, a seasonal festival has a name. You're kind of sketching with stickies. This is a way that you can think about wireframing ahead of wireframing, but just don't get too attached to it because it's not a wireframe. And it will have a type. And then what we would say also is it would have separately, I always do that, Sabbat type. And we would do the same type of notation here where we would say if the type was Sabbat. This is a dotted, this will be solid. I've got this kind of thing about dotted lines being about metadata that sits on top of your it's metadata as what we would call it. So it's metadata that sits on top of your attributes, your relationships, or your objects. And I'm a pretty big stickler for stuff like conditional logic or permissions or privacy, which we'll get to later, kind of being in this dotted line format. But you can do a Matryoshka diagram of it like this to show the kind of conditional relationship, or you could just put it right in your object map like this. All right, that hopefully answers your question. I'm going to look through the rest of your assignment and give you feedback within your whimsical board, but it looks like it's really good work. Be well, take care, happy UXing.